Hi, I'm Mark Davison, Senior Operations Director for rfxcel in Europe, and we're here today with Amit Sewak.
Hi,
Good
Mark.
afternoon.
Hi, Amit Sewak here, Director for Quality Management and Validation at rfxcel.
I often get asked by customers issues around data quality and how they manage data quality and things to ask and things to think about when they get software to manage their compliance with various traceability regulations. So we thought we'd put together a few minutes of video just to show you our thoughts on the matter, and we have our expert here in Amit who will talk us through some of the issues. And one of the most common questions I get really is, why is data quality such a mission critical issue for companies? What do they need to think about to really, from a business risk point of view?
Sure, Mark, it's a great question. One of the things that's very commonly emerging in the markets right now is the sensitivity of what data contains today. Data quality is really a process of managing your integral parts of your data for your systems and ensuring that on a risk-based level, you are containing and controlling that information. So unauthorized access is prevented, and folks who you don't want necessarily having that kind of data don't get information that is passed on to them in any kind of way. So it's definitely a concern for not only compliance, but protection and safety.
Right. And customers that we speak to sometimes think that that's built into systems, but we both know that that's not necessarily the case. You have to make a big effort to get that right. And
Absolutely.
Maybe explain a little bit of the things that we do at rfxcel to do that.
Absolutely. Customers are often in the perception that when you acquire a system as such, whatever level of system that may be, they think that inherently security comes as a standard part of that process. There's some level of security that's typically there, but not in all cases. In fact, it's actually, in most regulatory compliance markets, it's the customer's responsibility to ensure there's also a certain standard of compliance on data management and security that they're looking at the same time. So you cannot, as a customer, rely entirely on a system to do everything for you. We'd love to live in that ideal world, but we don't. So what we do at rfxcel is we take that to the next level. We ensure that there's a whole different slew of procedures and controls we have in place that are technical, administrative, or procedural that ensure that we are able to protect customers' data.
Right. And I think it's important to note that regulators are looking hard at this stuff, and I know you and I interact with audits and so on a regular basis. And
absolutely,
in my view, it's important that customers are on their toes with this stuff as we go into the era where we have the Drug Supply Chain Security Act, we have the Falsified Medicines Directive. This is only going to increase in importance, right?
Absolutely. The criticality of these kind of requirements actually, in fact, get heightened. And the sensitivity to it is even more present in the public and at the regulatory level. Because now the onus of being successful at managing data is not just an enterprise level situation, or it's not just a client or system-based situation. It is a holistic level of management of data. So not just who functions within it, but who also processes and works with these data. So that's a key requirement and a very crucial aspect for companies to be very sensitive and compliant to.
Right.
Because what happens is at the onus level, at a regulator's eyes, it's the company at the end of the day who's responsible. So as much as you'd like your vendors to be a part of the solution in this, they as customers need to also be proactively driving for projects on this level as well too. This is something rfxcel does really well, and we partner exceptionally successfully with our clients in doing that because we understand what the gaps and needs are based on our expertise, and then we go ahead and give them solutions as part of that process.
Right. And I think many times, I know you've seen this as well, we've helped customers to clean up their game.
Absolutely.
In terms of quality themselves, and maybe just go through some of the more common gotchas that we find when we go through this process with the customer.
Absolutely. I'll give you a fantastic example of this. Change control is actually something that you see quite often where customers can, in the past, have kind of said, well, I'll work with it the way it is, and I won't pay this level of detail to it, or I'll consider it to be an aspect of what this vendor provides me. In fact, that's not the case. At the end of the day, it's the customer who's responsible for any change control activities that are taking place. So as much as rfxcel does their part in making sure our customers are compliant, the customer also has a very invested value in ensuring the change control procedures are up to par and meet standards. And that means being an active partner with that vendor and going through change management. And that's something we do really well. In fact, we encourage all of our customers, and Mark, you've seen this many a times, where we tell our customers, we'd like you to be a partner with us in this process. You're not just a recipient of artifacts and documents.
Right, and that's an important point. Just to take a European perspective, regulators have told me on several occasions that they will expect the drug company to be in control of their system, regardless of vendor choice.
Absolutely.
They can't just install and go away.
Absolutely.
They have to have a watching brief on that. And I guess that's where the approach that we take in terms of private cloud architecture is helpful.
Absolutely. In fact, another part of this that you'll also find is quite interesting is risk management activities associated with validation. Mm-hmm. Quite often there's this sense of, how can I say this, sense of fearlessness that your vendor's managing validation activities, and as a customer of that service, I don't have to worry about it anymore. Right. That's completely the opposite. You as a customer are the most prevalent to the most vulnerable to those scenarios, especially if a vendor is not managing the validation activities per the regulations for your particular country. So you as a customer have to be very aware of this. And as part of what rfxcel does is we actually not only manage the validation process entirely for our customers, but we allow our customers to have the opportunity to remain in a validated state and in a compliant state. That's very different from just being in a validated state and then getting updates and fixing things and moving forward.
Right.
We're allowing you to have control of how your system is being addressed when it comes to any kind of scenario.
Yeah, I agree. And for me, it comes back to risk.
Yes.
The risk for a software vendor is typically limited to the value of the contract, right?
That's correct.
The risk for a drug company is almost unlimited.
That's
in terms
correct.
of lost sales, recalls, etc.
Absolutely. And we're talking about patient safety here.
Mm-hmm.
So these are key factors that as a software vendor, we don't think about. And any software vendor out there should not take the stance in saying that they do think about that, because that's not their core business. And that's also not their core strength. It's the pharmaceutical manufacturers at the end of the day. That is their core business. What we do at rfxcel is ensure that we can help them make those risk assessments and identify any vulnerabilities much earlier than before things are too late.
Right, absolutely. And I think one of the key beneficiaries of that is going to be very small drug companies, virtual companies.
Absolutely.
Particularly, it's the same in the US, but especially in Europe, the drug company has that responsibility, but they may not have the headcount and the bandwidth to put somebody onto that job full time. So
that's very true.
Helping people through that process is an important thing, an important step, I guess.
Absolutely. And we're looking at not just one aspect of getting them on board into a system and running, but it's about sustaining that system across the process. As you'd mentioned, for virtual organizations, the challenge is having the manpower or the labor to sustain a system. We at rfxcel are able to provide not only procedural guidelines and operational guidelines, but the full support needed in case if a customer goes through a compliance audit with the regulator and the customer points back to rfxcel and says, we utilize rfxcel support functions, we are able to provide that and support that. Right. We don't leave our customers high and dry.
Yeah, absolutely.